In the shadows of medieval Europe, where ancient stone walls whisper tales of terror, our story begins. Picture a world where fear wielded more power than armies, where ignorance cast longer shadows than cathedral spires. This is the tale of the Great Witch Hunt, a dark chapter that stained Europe's consciousness from 1450 to 1750. Through mist-shrouded streets and torchlit village squares, witness a woman being dragged by an enraged mob. Her wrists bound in iron chains, her cries lost among the hysterical screams of accusers. She could be your neighbor, your healer, your midwife. In this moment, she becomes something else, a witch, a demon, an object of society's deepest fears. The year is 1487. Europe trembles in the grip of profound transformation. The Renaissance brings new ideas, yet old superstitions sink their claws deeper into people's hearts. In this crucible of change, where the unknown breeds terror, a silent hunt begins. Villages turn against their own, families splinter, and communities collapse under the weight of suspicion. Look into the eyes of those who stood accused. Behind each trial, each confession extracted under torture, lies a story of human suffering. How many souls were sacrificed on the altar of fear? The numbers whisper through time. Estimates range from 40,000 to 60,000 lives extinguished, though some scholars suggest far more. Mothers, daughters, healers, widows, condemned not for crimes, but for being different, for knowing too much, for living too independently. This is not merely a tale of the past. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's darkest impulses, the need to find scapegoats, the desire to control through fear, the brutal consequences of unchecked power. As we delve into this haunting period, we uncover patterns that echo through centuries, reaching even into our modern world. Welcome to Modern Age Chronicles, where history comes alive through the voices of those who lived it, those who suffered, and those who wielded the power of life and death. This is not just a story of witches and witch hunters. It's a testament to human nature itself, a cautionary tale that continues to resonate across time. Before we venture deeper into this dark labyrinth of history, remember, every accusation, every trial, every execution was real. These were not fictional characters but flesh and blood human beings, caught in a web of fear that would take centuries to unravel. Let this journey into the heart of the European witch hunts begin. Keep your wits about you, for in this story, nothing is quite what it seems, and the line between victim and victimizer is often thinner than we'd like to believe. The stage of our dark narrative is set with three pivotal figures whose lives intertwine to shape one of history's most tragic chapters. Heinrich Kramer emerges from the shadows of 15th century Germany, a Dominican inquisitor whose obsession with witchcraft would forever alter European society. Born in Schlettstadt, his early life was steeped in religious fervor. By 1474, he had become the inquisitor of the Tyrol region, where his reputation for ruthlessness began to grow. His masterwork, the Malleus Maleficarum or Hammer of Witches, published in 1487, wasn't merely a manual, it was his twisted magnum opus. Within its pages, Kramer's deep-seated misogyny and paranoid fantasies about female sexuality merged with theological arguments to create a lethal weapon against women. His personal failures, including a humiliating defeat in Innsbruck where his witch-hunting methods were initially rejected, only fueled his fanatical mission. Pope Innocent VIII, born Giovanni Battista Cibo, ascends to our story as the reluctant enabler. His papal bull, Summis Desiderans Effectibus, in 1484 provided the official papal blessing that Kramer so desperately sought. This sophisticated Genoese nobleman, whose path to the papacy was paved with political acumen rather than spiritual fervor, found himself caught between maintaining church authority and controlling the growing hysteria. His decision to legitimize witch hunting would have consequences far beyond his imagination. Agnes Sampson stands as the human face of countless victims. Known as the Wise Wife of Keith, this respected Scottish midwife and healer served her community near East Lothian until 1590. Her story exemplifies the tragedy of knowledge turned to suspicion. Trusted by nobles and peasants alike for her healing skills, she became entangled in a web of political intrigue when King James VI became convinced of a witch conspiracy against him. Under extreme torture, she confessed to impossible crimes, including raising storms to sink the king's ships. Her dignified bearing, even during her final moments at the stake in 1591, became legendary. These central figures moved through a world where personal conflicts reflected broader societal tensions. Village healers found their ancient knowledge, passed down through generations, suddenly labeled as demonic. Neighbors who had shared bread and ale for decades began viewing each other through lenses of suspicion. The traditional wisdom of midwives, herbalists, and wise women, once respected and essential to community survival, became evidence of malevolent power. In private life, the persecution's targets were predominantly women who didn't fit societal norms. Widows living alone, unmarried women maintaining independence, successful female healers who challenged male medical authority, all became vulnerable. The average victim was often a woman past childbearing age, economically marginalized, perhaps sharp-tongued or unconventional in behavior. The power dynamics of the time created a perfect storm. Male-dominated institutions, the church, universities, courts systematically delegitimized female knowledge and authority. Women who had traditionally served as community healers found themselves caught between the emerging male medical profession and the watchful eyes of witch hunters. This period marked the first time in European history that women's traditional roles as healers and midwives became explicitly dangerous. The very knowledge that had made them indispensable to their communities, understanding of herbs, healing practices, childbirth, became evidence of diabolic influence. The intimate knowledge of the female body, once the domain of midwives and healers, was gradually appropriated by male physicians, while its traditional practitioners faced increasing suspicion and hostility. These characters, both perpetrators and victims, moved through a world where power, knowledge, and gender became inextricably linked in a dance of death. Their stories reveal not just individual tragedies, but the larger patterns of social control, gender politics, and institutional power that continue to resonate today. Their legacy lives on, not just in historical records, but in the continuing dialogue about power, persecution, and the price paid when society turns against its own members in the name of security and conformity. Step into a world where every shadow holds potential danger, where the very air vibrates with tension. The European landscape of 1450 to 1750 comes alive through a symphony of sensations that defined daily existence during the witch hunt era. Dawn breaks over a medieval town to the rhythmic tolling of church bells. These are not merely timekeepers' chimes. They mark accusations, trials, and executions. The deep, resonant bells echo through narrow cobblestone streets, mixing with the mundane sounds of daily life. Wooden cart wheels creaking, market vendors calling, and the ever-present murmur of prayers. But listen closer. There's the chilling clank of iron chains being dragged across stone floors, the desperate sobbing from dungeon cells, and the terrible roar of crowds gathering for another public spectacle of justice. The air itself tells stories. Market squares carry the aroma of fresh bread and herbs, suddenly cut through by the acrid smoke of another pyre. In the damp stone cells beneath the courthouse, the musty smell of moldy straw mingles with the metallic tang of blood and the sharp stench of human fear. Torture chambers reek of sweat and burned flesh, while the herbal sachets carried by wealthy citizens attempt to ward off both disease and the odors of unwashed humanity. Touch becomes a gateway to understanding this world. Feel the rough-hewn wooden benches in the courtroom, smoothed by generations of witnesses. The coarse wool and linen of common clothing speaks of practicality and status, while the instruments of judicial torture present a grotesque catalogue of human ingenuity. The sharp metal of thumb screws, the splintering wood of the rack, the cold iron of chains and shackles. Daily life in European villages pulses with barely contained anxiety. Women gather at wells, their conversations guarded, aware that any complaint about a neighbor's cow going dry could spiral into accusations of maleficium. Children are taught to fear certain houses, certain people, creating invisible boundaries within tight-knit communities. The local wise woman, once respected for her healing knowledge, now practices in secret, her remedies disguised as simple cooking. The justice system operates like a theater of the absurd. Judges consult ancient texts on demonology while examining evidence of witchcraft. Birthmarks interpreted as devil's marks, cats suspected as familiars, even the direction of smoke from a chimney. In the courtroom, logic bends to accommodate supernatural explanations, and accusers need only point a finger to set the machinery of persecution in motion. Clothing becomes a complex language of social signals. The wealthy protect themselves with elaborate garments, while the poor wear their vulnerability in every patch and tear. Widows, particularly vulnerable to accusations, might try to make themselves invisible in drab colors and modest cuts. A woman's head covering becomes crucial. Too elaborate might suggest vanity. Too shabby could hint at poverty-driven desperation. Weather itself becomes an actor in this drama. Storm clouds gathering over fields spark whispered accusations of weather magic. A sudden frost killing crops leads to suspicious glances at the old woman living alone at the edge of town. Even natural phenomena take on sinister meanings. A red sunset might be interpreted as an omen, a sudden wind as evidence of diabolic activity. Markets and taverns serve as information exchanges where rumors germinate and spread. The tavern keeper hears everything, speaks carefully, and watches as loose tongues and strong ale combine to create dangerous accusations. In the marketplace, prices of protective amulets and blessed objects soar as people seek security through superstition. This was a world where every detail carried weight. The position of a house too isolated, the success of a farm, suspiciously good harvest, even the health of children, why does her baby thrive while others sicken, became potential evidence in the endless search for hidden evil. The very fabric of society was woven with threads of suspicion, creating a tapestry of fear that would take centuries to unravel. In this atmosphere, even the most innocent actions could be reinterpreted through the lens of witch-hunting mania. A woman gathering herbs by moonlight, once a common sight, becomes cause for alarm. A midwife's successful delivery of a difficult birth might be celebrated one day and used as evidence of supernatural power the next. This immersive world of the European witch hunts wasn't just a backdrop for historical events. It was an active participant in shaping human behavior, decisions, and destinies. Understanding these sensory and social details helps us comprehend not just what happened, but how it felt to live through one of history's darkest chapters. Our story unfolds across 3 centuries, following a dramatic arc that transformed European society and left an indelible mark on human history. The first whispers of organized witch hunting emerged from the alpine valleys of Western Europe. In 1435, the first mass witch trial occurred in the Valais region of Switzerland, marking a sinister shift from isolated accusations to systematic persecution. Previously, witchcraft had been viewed as a minor offense, often handled by local authorities with relatively mild punishments. However, the convergence of several factors, the Black Death's aftermath, religious upheaval, and social instability, created fertile ground for a new, more terrifying interpretation of witchcraft. Early accusations typically focused on simple maleficium, harmful magic affecting crops, livestock, or personal health. Local disputes between neighbors might escalate into whispered accusations of supernatural revenge. The Church, initially skeptical of widespread witchcraft, gradually shifted its position as Dominican and Franciscan inquisitors began reporting evidence of organized diabolic cults. The publication of the Malleus Maleficarum marked a crucial turning point. This infamous manual, written by Heinrich Kramer, provided a comprehensive framework for identifying, prosecuting, and condemning witches. Its publication coincided with the invention of the printing press, allowing its poisonous ideas to spread rapidly across Europe. The manual's impact was profound. It systematically linked witchcraft with women, providing scholarly justification for gender-based persecution. Its detailed descriptions of torture methods and trial procedures became a blueprint for witch hunters across Europe. Most significantly, it transformed witchcraft from a crime of harmful magic into a spiritual offense, a direct pact with Satan. The peak of witch-hunting hysteria arrived like a perfect storm. Religious tensions from the Reformation and Counter-Reformation created an atmosphere of extreme spiritual anxiety. Climate changes during the Little Ice Age led to crop failures and hardship, while growing state power provided the administrative machinery for large-scale persecutions. This period saw the most infamous witch trials, the North Berwick trials in Scotland, 1590 to 1592. The Würzburg witch trials, 1626 to 1631. The Bamberg witch trials, 1626 to 1631. Entire communities were decimated. In some German towns, the execution pyres burned continuously. Social bonds crumbled as accusation led to torture, torture to confession, and confession to more accusations in a devastating cycle. The decline of witch hunting came gradually, driven by multiple factors. Legal scholars began questioning the reliability of torture-induced confessions. Scientific thinking slowly replaced supernatural explanations for natural phenomena. Perhaps most importantly, the social elite began to view witch hunting as emblematic of popular superstition rather than legitimate justice. For men like Nicholas Remy and Jean Bodin, witch hunting was a sacred duty. Their writings reveal absolute conviction in the reality of diabolic conspiracy. They saw themselves as warriors in a cosmic battle between good and evil, protecting Christianity from internal corruption. Court records and rare survivors' accounts paint a horrifying picture of interrogation and torture. Many victims maintained their innocence until physical pain became unbearable. Others, particularly elderly women living alone, seemed to internalize their community's accusations, sometimes confessing to impossible crimes. Contemporary observers. Skeptics existed even during the height of the persecutions. Montaigne questioned the reality of witchcraft. Friedrich Spee, a Jesuit priest who served as confessor to condemned witches, wrote scathing critiques of witch trials. Their observations provide crucial perspective on how some contemporaries resisted the hysteria. The witch hunts fundamentally altered European society. They contributed to the marginalization of traditional female healing practices, the strengthening of state judicial power, a shift in how societies view evidence and proof, the development of modern legal protections for the accused. This narrative arc demonstrates how ideas, once unleashed and institutionalized, can transform society. The witch hunts weren't merely a series of trials. They represented a fundamental shift in how European society understood itself, its fears, and its methods of control. Modern scholars continue to debate the total number of victims, with estimates ranging from 40,000 to 100,000 executions. However, the true impact extends far beyond numbers, reaching into the very fabric of Western civilization's development and our modern understanding of justice, gender, and power. The story of the European witch hunts serves as a powerful reminder of how societies can be transformed by fear, and how institutional power can be marshaled to devastating effect against vulnerable populations. Its lessons remain relevant in understanding modern witch hunts, moral panics, and the dynamics of social persecution. What aspects of this historical period resonate most strongly with you? How do you see similar patterns of fear and persecution manifesting in our modern world? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles for more fascinating historical deep dives like this one. A deep dive into the historical record reveals a chilling paper trail of the European witch hunts, documented through an extensive array of primary sources that paint a vivid picture of this dark period. The most detailed evidence comes from meticulous court documentation. The Württemberg trials, 1561 to 1670, left exhaustive records detailing interrogation methods, confessions, and sentences. These papers reveal standardized questioning patterns and the systematic use of torture. Notable are the margins filled with judges' personal observations, showing their reasoning and, occasionally, their doubts. Nicolas Remy's Demonolatrie Libritrace, 1595, offers an intimate glimpse into the mind of an inquisitor. His detailed notes provide insight into the identifying marks used to accuse individuals of witchcraft, along with methods employed to extract confessions. Similarly, the Diary of Peter Binsfeld from Trier records harrowing accounts of over 6,500 executions, interspersed with his personal reflections on the necessity of his actions. These writings reveal not only the mechanics of witch trials, but also the chilling rationale behind them. The Vatican archives preserve key ecclesiastical documents that shaped the witch trials. Among them is Pope Innocent VIII's bull Summis Desiderans Effectibus, 1484, which legitimized the hunt for witches. Church council decisions outline protocols for trials, while correspondence between local clergy and Rome reflects the Church's oversight of these accusations. These records also document theological debates that wrestled with the reality of witchcraft, exposing the ideological underpinnings of the era. Witness testimonies paint a vivid picture of community dynamics during the witch hunts. Many accusations arose from mundane disputes among neighbors, often escalating into deadly trials. Children's testimonies, tragically common, were frequently used to condemn their own parents. Character witnesses provided statements both for and against the accused, adding layers of complexity to the cases. Court clerks meticulously recorded the final words of the condemned, preserving a somber record of these events. Medical records played a pivotal role in witch trials, with physicians examining accused individuals for so-called witch marks. Midwives often testified about unusual births, their words used as evidence of supernatural interference. Additionally, records of miraculous cures attributed to witchcraft were leveraged to justify accusations, demonstrating the blending of superstition and medical observation. Geographically, certain regions experienced higher intensities of witch hunts. The Holy Roman Empire, encompassing much of modern Germany, saw over 25,000 executions, while Switzerland recorded over 4,000. Scotland accounted for 1,500, and northeastern France suffered 3,000 deaths. Notable hotspots include Würzburg, which witnessed 900 executions in a single year, 1629, Bamberg with 600 executions between 1609 and 1632, and Trier, where 368 individuals from 22 villages were executed from 1587 to 1593. Maps of inquisitor routes reveal systematic patterns of persecution, such as Heinrich Kramer's journey through southern Germany, Nicholas Remy's circuit in Lorraine, and Matthew Hopkins' infamous trail across East Anglia. Statistical analysis sheds light on the demographic patterns of those accused. Women comprised 75 to 85% of the accused, predominantly aged 40 to 60, and largely from lower or middle-class backgrounds. Widows and unmarried women were disproportionately targeted, reflecting broader societal biases. Temporal trends indicate sporadic cases before 1500, a dramatic surge between 1550 and 1630, followed by a gradual decline until 1750. Regional variations in intensity further highlight the uneven spread of these trials. Material evidence brings the witch trials into stark focus. Museums preserve torture instruments that were used to extract confessions, alongside artifacts such as witch bottles and protective charms. Execution sites, surviving prison cells, and confiscated personal belongings of the accused provide a haunting glimpse into the lives affected by these persecutions. Architectural remnants, such as hexenterms, witch prisons, modified courthouses, and execution grounds, stand as enduring testaments to this dark chapter in history. Documentary analysis reveals patterns that standardized the witch trials. Confession formats followed recurring templates, accusations often echoed common themes, and testimonies included similar elements across regions. Torture protocols, meticulously recorded, highlight the systematic nature of these interrogations. Linguistic studies trace the evolution of witchcraft terminology, noting regional variations in accusations, legal vocabulary, and shifts in religious language over time. Modern archaeological findings continue to illuminate the realities of the witch trials. Excavations at execution grounds and prisons have uncovered mass graves and evidence of protective rituals. Scientific examination of historical documents, through carbon dating and ink analysis, confirms the authenticity of these records. Forensic investigations at execution sites and analyses of preserved evidence deepen our understanding of the practices that led to one of history's most tragic episodes. This comprehensive documentation allows historians to reconstruct not only the events themselves, but also their progression and impact across Europe. The evidence reveals both the systematic nature of the persecutions and their devastating human cost. These records serve as crucial warnings about the power of institutionalized persecution and the importance of maintaining legal and social safeguards against mass hysteria. The meticulous nature of these records, particularly in German-speaking territories, provides an unfortunate irony. The very bureaucratic efficiency that enabled systematic persecution also preserved the evidence that would later condemn it. Today, these documents serve as powerful teaching tools about the dangers of unchecked authority and the importance of protecting individual rights. The European witch hunts cast a shadow that continues to shape our world, leaving deep scars on social structures, gender dynamics, and the preservation of knowledge systems. Among the most devastating impacts was the destruction of traditional knowledge, which once served as the foundation for medical, agricultural, and cultural practices. Centuries-old herbal remedies and healing traditions, many passed down orally through generations, were lost. Women's understanding of reproductive health, often viewed as threatening, was systematically suppressed. In agriculture, traditional methods of crop rotation, local plant breeding knowledge, and weather prediction techniques disappeared, disrupting the balance of rural economies. Culturally, the hunts led to the eradication of folk traditions, mythology, and alternative spiritual practices, severing communities from their ancestral wisdom. Female healers bore the brunt of these persecutions, their roles in society marginalized to the point of erasure. Women were excluded from emerging medical professions, and traditional midwifery was criminalized, forcing healers out of their vital roles in community health. The breaking of mentor-apprentice relationships destroyed intergenerational knowledge transfer, and female-centered healing traditions were effectively wiped out. Socially, women lost their authority in healthcare, their economic independence, and the respect of their communities. Stigmatization of female medical practitioners further entrenched gender inequality, leaving a legacy of distrust toward women in medical leadership. The witch hunts strengthened patriarchal structures, consolidating male authority across institutions and private life. Male-dominated education systems flourished while church and state power intertwined to tighten control over daily life. Women faced increased surveillance, stricter enforcement of gender roles, and limited participation in public spheres. Economically, women were stripped of property rights, inheritance opportunities, and access to independent income, creating a cycle of dependency on men that persisted for generations. The psychological toll of the witch hunts is immeasurable, with trauma reverberating across centuries. On an individual level, survivors and descendants experienced deep fear of authority, internalized misogyny, and chronic anxiety. Communities suffered from broken trust, pervasive suspicion, and weakened support systems. Intergenerationally, these patterns ingrained fear of self-expression and standing out, while familial trauma transmitted silent, enduring scars. Modern manifestations of these witch hunts remain visible. Gender bias persists in healthcare systems, where women remain underrepresented in leadership roles and disparities in care prevail. The cultural legacy of the hunts includes stereotypes perpetuated in media, trivialization of historical persecution, and commodification of witch imagery. Judicially, the hunts contributed to the evolution of due process and recognition of torture's unreliability, while economically, they disrupted local markets, shifted professional structures, and deepened gender-based economic disparities. Today, parallels to the witch hunts appear in social media-fueled moral panics, conspiracy theories, and gender-based persecution. The lessons learned underscore the need for robust legal protections, gender equality, and the recovery of lost traditional knowledge. As modern societies confront these lingering shadows, feminist movements, alternative medicine revivals, and cultural healing processes offer paths forward, seeking to restore balance and justice where history failed. This comprehensive analysis reveals how the witch hunts fundamentally altered European society's fabric, creating ripple effects that continue to influence modern social structures, healthcare systems, and gender relations. Understanding these impacts helps explain persistent patterns in contemporary society and offers valuable lessons for preventing similar persecution in the future. The legacy of the witch hunts serves as a powerful reminder of how systematic persecution can permanently alter social structures and cultural knowledge, while also highlighting the resilience of human communities in preserving and eventually reclaiming lost wisdom and rights. The European witch hunts unfolded at a crossroads of history, where medieval religious certainties collided with the burgeoning rationalism of early modern science. This clash of worldviews created a unique civilizational moment that fueled systematic persecution. At the heart of the medieval worldview was a cosmology dividing the universe into celestial and terrestrial realms, where divine and diabolic forces directly influenced earthly events. Natural phenomena were interpreted as spiritual signs, while society adhered to a rigid, hierarchical structure. The Church held unparalleled authority as the primary source of knowledge, with Scripture regarded as literal truth. Social order rested on the divine right of rulers and collective responsibility for sin, binding communities under a shared religious identity. The transition to scientific thought began challenging these traditional paradigms. Emerging rationalism emphasized empirical observation, systematic inquiry, and skepticism toward established authorities. The scientific revolution brought transformative ideas, such as Copernican heliocentrism, anatomical discoveries, and mathematical approaches to understanding nature. These shifts created intellectual tensions as faith and reason clashed, with institutions often resisting change. Despite this resistance, attempts to reconcile old beliefs with new knowledge reflected a society in flux, where the tension between tradition and innovation fueled fear and uncertainty. Fear became a potent political tool, harnessed to maintain control in turbulent times. States manipulated public anxiety to create common enemies, consolidating power through institutional persecution and public punishments. Communities enforced conformity through surveillance, shaming, and economic sanctions, ensuring adherence to social norms. Religious authorities leveraged fear of eternal damnation and the threat of excommunication to enforce moral discipline, embedding narratives of spiritual warfare into daily life. These systems of control intersected with inquisitorial legal frameworks, where torture was employed as a legitimate tool to extract confessions, and evidence standards were manipulated to convict the accused. Cultural paradigms further shaped the context of the witch hunts. Knowledge systems were deeply divided, with oral traditions and folk wisdom often dismissed in favor of written authority and learned knowledge. Social dynamics reflected urban-rural divides, strict gender roles, and community hierarchies based on age, profession, and status. Power structures, rooted in church-state relationships and noble privileges, reinforced a system where dissent and difference were systematically silenced. In this environment, economic pressures such as climate change, population growth, and resource competition heightened tensions, exacerbating the fear and scapegoating that fueled the witch trials. The intellectual environment of the time was equally complex. The development of universities, the scholastic method, and the printing press facilitated the spread of ideas, yet language barriers and limited information networks restricted their reach. Intellectual trends such as humanism, the Protestant Reformation, and Renaissance thinking began to challenge established norms, fostering an environment of change and conflict. Social changes, including urbanization, professional specialization, and political centralization, alongside technological advances like the printing press and navigation tools, transformed the fabric of society. These transitional elements set the stage for long-term impacts on institutions, social structures, and cultural legacies. The legacy of the witch hunts resonates to this day. They contributed to the formation of modern state institutions, the evolution of legal systems, and the professionalization of fields such as education and medicine. Socially, they reshaped gender relations, class structures, and community dynamics, leaving scars that echo across centuries. Culturally, the witch hunts served as a cautionary tale, underscoring the importance of religious tolerance, scientific thinking, and individual rights. As history continues to be shaped by the lessons of this dark period, the witch hunts remain a powerful reminder of the dangers of fear-driven persecution and the enduring need for progress, understanding, and justice. This civilizational context reveals how the witch hunts emerged from a unique confluence of medieval and early modern elements. The period represented a crucial transition in Western civilization, where older forms of knowledge and authority confronted new ways of understanding the world. This collision created conditions where systematic persecution could flourish, supported by both traditional and emerging power structures. Understanding this context helps explain not only why the witch hunts occurred, but also how they contributed to shaping modern Western civilization. The period's legacy continues to influence contemporary discussions about authority, knowledge, gender, and social control. The witch hunts thus serve as a crucial case study in how civilizational transitions can create conditions for systematic persecution, while also demonstrating how societies eventually develop mechanisms to prevent such events from recurring. In this journey through one of history's darkest chapters, we've uncovered truths that resonate deeply with our modern world. Let's explore the powerful questions that emerge from the European witch hunts and their relevance today. Consider how fear rippled through medieval communities, transforming neighbors into enemies. The whispered accusations, the pointed fingers, the desperate attempts to prove innocence against impossible charges. These mechanisms of fear didn't vanish with the last witch trial. Today, we witness similar patterns when societies face uncertainty or change. Social media witch hunts, moral panics, and the demonization of minority groups all echo the fundamental dynamics of the witch persecution era. Imagine walking through your own community, knowing that any misstep, any deviation from accepted norms could mark you as a target. The medieval woman gathering herbs by moonlight becomes today's nonconformist, challenging established social orders. How quickly can fear transform rational people into persecutors? What makes communities turn against their own members? Our digital age has created new tools for persecution. The torch-wielding mob has been replaced by viral tweets and online shaming campaigns. Character assassination happens at lightning speed. Reputations built over decades can crumble in hours. The medieval witch hunter's manual finds its parallel in algorithmic persecution, where automated systems can mark individuals as suspicious based on patterns of behavior or association. Yet these modern mechanisms operate on the same psychological principles that drove the witch hunts. The need to find scapegoats, the desire to eliminate perceived threats to social order, the use of public humiliation as a tool of control. What has changed is not human nature, but the sophistication of our methods. The witch hunts teach us to look beyond individual acts of persecution to see systematic patterns of oppression. Just as the Malleus Maleficarum provided an intellectual framework for persecution, modern systems of oppression often hide behind seemingly rational justifications. Legal structures, social norms, and institutional practices can work together to target vulnerable populations. What are today's equivalent of the witch hunter's manual? How do we identify and challenge systemic bias? The persecution of witches wasn't just about individuals making accusations. It was supported by legal systems, religious institutions, and social structures. Today's systems of oppression similarly rely on interlocking institutional support. The decline of witch hunting offers hope and instruction. It took the courage of individual voices, speaking against prevailing wisdom, to begin dismantling the apparatus of persecution. Scholars who questioned torture-based evidence, priests who defended the accused, community members who refused to participate in the madness. These voices eventually turned the tide. What role can individuals play in challenging modern systems of persecution? How do we balance security with justice, protection with freedom? The witch hunts remind us that progress often begins with questioning accepted truths and standing up for the vulnerable. As we conclude our exploration of the European witch hunts, we're left with powerful questions about human nature and society. How do we prevent fear from overriding reason? How do we protect the vulnerable from systematic persecution? How do we build communities based on understanding rather than suspicion? These questions aren't merely academic. They challenge us to examine our own beliefs, prejudices, and actions. They ask us to consider how we might respond when faced with the choice between conformity and conscience, between safety and justice. Your perspective matters in this ongoing dialogue about power, persecution, and justice. How do you see these historical patterns reflecting in our modern world? What lessons from the witch hunts resonate most strongly with your experience? Join our community at Modern Age Chronicles, where we continue to explore history's most compelling narratives and their modern implications. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into the stories that shaped our world and continue to influence our future. Together, we can learn from history's darkest chapters to build a more enlightened tomorrow. Remember, the past isn't just a collection of distant events. It's a mirror reflecting our own society's deepest challenges and possibilities. Let's engage with these reflections thoughtfully and purposefully as we work toward a more just and understanding world.